A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. What was your creepy unexplained experience as a child? Haven't told this one in a while. I was young, 5 to 7, somewhere in there. I was sleeping in between my parents for whatever reason. I woke up, I remember the clock reading around 4 a.m. There was something standing by the window, looking out into the front yard. It looked like a man in a brown wool robe, about 6 feet 4 inches or so. I started to stir and sat up in bed, and the thing turned and looked at me. Dear God, that face. Extremely pale white skin, lots of really pronounced wrinkles, and the face drooped like it was melting, down into a really pointy chin, almost similar to a scream mask but with all of the features of a living being. Its mouth was hanging open and its eyes were wide, almost like it was worried or frightened. It kept its gaze on me while it moved away from the window, in front of the bed, and out the open bedroom door. The second it exited the room, the lights turned on their own and both of my parents jumped up on either side of me, breathing heavily like they'd both just woken up from a nightmare. To be clear, I was fully able to move during this. I don't think it was sleep paralysis, but I'm not sure what it could have been other than some kind of demon or really fucking ugly ghost. I've never seen it since, but I can still picture it clear as day. I had an experience, which may or may not be similar. When I was 5 to 7 years old, I lived in a huge rural house in South Korea. The house had a courtyard, and the street outside was barely lit. It was night time, and I was the last one to get the groceries out of the trunk. I walked through the gate, locked it and walked to the front door of the house. Suddenly, I got this chill that ran through my spine, and I turned backwards, instinctively. I can't really explain what I saw. It was a glowing bright blue human-shaped figure floating in the middle of the courtyard and it was slowly floating closer. I got this jolt I'm pretty sure is associated with primal fear. I wrenched open the door, locked it fast, ran to the living room, and played with my Lego like nothing was wrong. That night, I had a weird dream. My mother was missing, and I was looking for her in desperation. I found a door embedded in a hill. Something was off about the door, so I opened it. It blasted open and hellish things poured out of it. I'm talking like Silent Hill level shit. It may not be creepy typing it out, but the memory of that night is burned into my mind. My mom was fine when I woke up. On a side note, I'm also very prone to sleep paralysis. I have episodes where I wake up in sleep paralysis 3 to 4 times a week that last a month. Then I'll be free for half a year or so. My friends joke that I'm haunted. Haha. This happened to me as well. I swear this happened. I was young, in elementary school, and I looked out the window of my room late at night. There was a guy standing there in a tattered suit. He was really tall and bald and was looking straight at me from down on the sidewalk under the lamp. His face was eerily white and his eyes were red. It was terrifying. I ran to tell my parents and dragged them to the window, but no one was there. It's a suburban area and no one is ever out that late. To this day I still have trouble sleeping in my bedroom for fear of that thing. I'm 24 now. My mom put me to bed in my room, but I woke up downstairs. I thought it was a dream, but some man picked me up when I was almost asleep, carried me downstairs and put me down on some blankets between a sofa and chair. I was quite young, so my parents still had a safety gate. My dad wasn't in work nights then, and my mom was asleep, so no one knows how I managed to get downstairs. I can still remember this now, strangely. When I was a child, my grandparents' house always creeped me out. I was terrified of the basement, and there was something off about the rest of the house. Once when I was 10, my mom and I were sleeping in my grandpa's bed. I couldn't sleep and I was facing the middle of the bed, so the back of my head was near the space between the bed and the wall/window. All of a sudden, I feel something poke the back of my head twice. I was petrified and froze, so I never turned my head to see what was poking me. To this day I don't know what could have happened, but I can still feel those pokes. I was young, maybe 8. Just so you know, I always go to sleep in my bed and I'd never, ever fall asleep on the couch. My grandpa died and we got back from his funeral. That night I went to bed, in my room as usual, but I woke up in the middle of the night on the living room couch. When I looked up, I saw my grandpa's ghost. It wasn't scary or anything, at the time it felt natural. He didn't say anything, but there was this understanding between us. I went back to my room and went back to sleep. I would have assumed it was a dream, but it was so vivid and real that it stuck with me for years, especially since I woke up on the couch, which made the moment stick out even more in my mind. It wasn't even a "I saw a ghost" moment. It was just a weird vivid memory that seemed so normal at the time that I didn't think anything strange of it. When I was about 20 I told my mom that story and she said, "Was it the day of his funeral? Because I saw his ghost that night too." That fucked my shit up. From 5 to 6 years old, I would see a shadow figure, perfect human woman shape, walk the walls in the night, back and forth. It really creeped me out that I would just put the covers over my head. I was an only child and my parents were in their bedroom. It was when I was still wide awake way before I got sleepy. So creepy. I was laying on my bedroom floor, just sleep over things, and looking out my open door into the hallway. There aren't any windows in the hall or in nearby rooms that could cast a shadow out into that part of the hallway, but I saw the shadow of someone walking into the bathroom. I figured it was my cousin, but then they came up the stairs, down the hall and into my room. I totally flipped out and we couldn't figure out where the shadow came from. When I was about 5 years old, I fell asleep on my mother's lap during a long bus ride and, from my perception, woke up at our destination in what seemed to me like the blink of an eye, which in reality was a bit over 8 hours. I literally did not perceive any length of time passing between laying my head down and getting up. Probably the closest I'll ever come to knowing what time travel feels like. Was about 5 or 6. One night my parents and I were watching TV in the living room of our ranch-style house in the suburbs in the Midwest. A stanger light coming from the hallway got our attention. In the bedroom at the end of the hall there was a 1 by 1 foot glowing orb of light floating about 3 to 4 feet from the floor, illuminating the dark room. The orb seemed to realize it was being observed and moved very quickly, and before we knew it the orb was outside like it had passed through the wall or windows. It then very quickly went around the house, jumping or passing through 2 6-foot fences in a matter of seconds. We saw it do this through the windows and our dog started freaking out. My dad freaks out and grabs his revolver and a flashlight and storms outside. It had rained recently and there was mud outside, but no evidence of footprints or anything to rationally explain it. While the event is family legend now, my mom thought it was a ghost or spirit, my dad thought it was aliens, and quite frankly I have no idea. I lean towards ball lightning, but it seemed to have at least some level of intelligence and seemed to make deliberate, not random movements. I was 8 years old and my cousin was turning 8 the next month. This occurred in early August. To add some context to this event, my family owned land. A few of my uncles built their houses on their property, including my dad. My dad's house and my uncle's house are about 130 meters apart, and in the evening the farm lights light up the dirt path between their houses. The event, I remember this evening so clearly. It was a warm evening, the sun had just set, the evening was calm, no wind or inclement weather. My cousin and I are walking back to my dad's house, we're talking, and as we come about 50 meters close to my dad's house, this blinding white light flashed twice. We both just stood there. We were both silent, standing there. We both looked at each other and said, "Did that just happen?" We both freaked out and ran the rest of the 50 meters back to my house. We, both very excited by this event, told my parents and his dad what happened outside, but nobody witnessed this, as the curtains were closed inside. None of the adults believed us. They said nothing, just kind of acknowledged us and continued visiting. The light wasn't accompanied with thunder because it wasn't lightning. The light was blinding. The acreage is located in the prairies. I don't know if there is any logical explanation for this event, but ever since then I have always believed that maybe, just maybe it was aliens or some astronomical event. I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous to some people, but my cousin and I don't try to convince other people what we experienced, because we both know what we experienced. When I was 7, my dad had bought a pocket watch that came with its own stand. He put it on top of our TV, since we didn't have any other clock in the house besides the bedroom just yet. We had just moved in 2 weeks earlier. Me being me, I got up in the middle of the night when everyone was asleep to get a quick late-night snack. I sneak halfway across the living room when I noticed that the pocket watch's tick was getting louder and louder. I stopped to inspect it. Didn't seem to be that bad. I ignored it, got my snack, started heading back. Again, I heard the tick of the pocket watch getting louder and louder. I stopped again, then heard the following sung in a song. Mr. Frost is a bad man, Mr. Frost is a snitch. Mr. Frost is a bad man, beat us within an inch. I bolt to my room, hide under the covers and refuse to come out. Ever since then, I've hated that pocket watch. I've tried many times to search for someone named Mr. Frost in my area and nothing has come up. When I was little, I would have dreams that came true. I'd dream of someone coming for dinner and then there would be a surprise guest the next day. Stuff like that. Then when I was about 5 or 6 it started to get dark. I was dreaming about cousins in car crashes or a friend's older sister cutting herself, and it all happened within a week or 2. It started to freak me out, so decided to tell my parents. At first, they tried to calm me down, but then they started noticing it and getting freaked out, which only scared me even more. And then one day I stopped dreaming. I haven't had a dream, prophetic or otherwise, since, and honestly it kind of scares me to think about. I was like 9 years old. I was sleeping in my parents' bed. At that point I think it was a Saturday morning and my dad had gone bike riding with his friends real early, and I woke up and got in bed with my mom. I was having a bad dream and I woke up and looked around and went to go pee. When I got back into the bed there was a white pale hand waving at me from behind the closet. I thought I was dreaming, but I was so shocked I couldn't do anything. I kind of put it in the back of my mind until a year later my older cousin said she had seen a hand waving at her behind her mirror when I was at her house. It made me realize I really experienced that and didn't imagine it. I was about 8 or 9 when this happened. My family had a boat that we trailered back and forth from Lake Hapatcong in NJ. We were coming in from a day on the lake and it was already dark. I was obsessed with fishing at that age and the dock was a great spot to fish, so as my family was getting the boat hitched to the trailer I decided to throw some casts out. I noticed some activity in the water about 30 yards from where I was standing, which was about 60 feet from the boat ramp my family was hitching the boat at. I threw my line towards what I thought was fish feeding / jumping, and whatever was causing the activity turned towards where I was and started swimming towards me with a kind of serpentine motion. It was too dark to make out any distinctive features except a large head. I noped the fuck out, dropped my fishing pole and ran. No one believed me at the time, but 20 years later and my story hasn't changed and I still wonder WTF that thing was. About time I get to talk about this again. My family lives in a super rural part of East Tennessee, and we have a family homestead that's been passed down for generations called the Turley house. Legend in the family has it that it was a Civil War hospital, which I can totally see because it's absolutely ancient and creepy. We also have a legend in the family that we're all haunted by a demon / spirit / God knows what called Wool Eyes. He's so prominent in our family's history that he's just a fact of life at this point, so it's not unusual to hear somebody say something like, "Oh look, Wool Eyes is at it again. He must be upset." One of the creepy experiences I had growing up here is the never-ending rosebush. There were 2 rose bushes on the corner of the house that weren't very big. I have some distinct memories of playing around them and getting absolutely batshit lost in the rose bushes, running in circles for hours and hours at a time. It was sort of like that scene in Spirited Away when Chihiro and Haku are running through the flower hedges. Eventually I would find my way out, but it would be hours later and my mom would be hella angry that I was gone for so long. I never really thought much of it because kid logic, but I asked my mom about it years later and she said that all the kids in the family have stories about getting lost in the same spot. Everybody always blamed it on Wool Eyes, saying he was just having fun messing around. Wish I could go back and explore the house some. It's got some crazy stories through the years. When I was about 4 and my brother was around 2, we were playing outside in the front yard. We had a sprinkler, so me and my brother were running around in it. I guess my mom was busy or taking a nap because she didn't come outside while we were out there. I remember a man and a woman in a car driving down our private road thought they stopped and called us over. I remember them taking a few pictures and laughing and asking where our parents were. At this point my little brother had decided to take off his trunks and was running around naked. They kept taking pictures and told us to be safe and left. I remember when I told my parents, they were so mad and I thought I had done something wrong. Looking back now, I'm surprised we didn't get kidnapped or something. I wish I could remember more details, but it was over 16 years ago.